Animal Farm is a novel written by George Orwell from 1945. We're doing something different now. Obviously, we don't talk about books on the channel. We are a film channel. But we thought we're going to look at... So we have both read the book of Animal Farm, and we've also watched both versions. There are two versions of Animal Farm. There is the classic animation that came out in 1954, and then there was a kind of live animated film that came, which had live actors and animated animals.
Animatronic.
Animatronic, yeah. Jim Henson Workshop created them, and that came out in 1999. So what we thought we would do is we would watch both versions of the film and read the book, and then kind of compare, you know, what different versions did and what was different to the book, and, you know, how
which was more successful in
Exactly.
translating the book. So.
Yeah, so this is a completely new area for us. We haven't done anything like this before, so bear with us.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hand over to Simon, who's going to talk a little bit about the plot of Animal Farm.
Yes, well, I mean, the reason I chose it is it's pretty thin. It's less than 100 pages. When I first came up with the idea, I thought, let's choose a short book first. So, in case it's a complete disaster and it doesn't work. But yes, I mean, if you haven't heard of it, it's the story of, obviously, a farm with animals on it. But it's the tale of pigs and horses and cows and other farmyard animals that rise up and overthrow their abusive owner and run the farm themselves. But it's an allegory for the Russian Revolution and the fair society that is originally their aim, or is what they strive for, is corrupted by those who are hungry for power. The first adaptation was in 1954, so only 9 years after the book was written, and was directed by John Hallas and Joy Batchelor. It was kind of a British-American co-production, apparently commissioned by the CIA as propaganda. Their sort of anti-communist art. Well, I think that is established as being true, but how much? They allegedly they funded it, but it's unclear whether the filmmakers actually knew that was where the money was coming from. It was the first British animated film at the time that had a theatrical release anyway. But it took a long time for it to actually turn any profit, 15 years before it made any money. I mean, I don't remember being taught it in school. We did Lord of the Flies, which is another one we could do because that's had more than one adaptation.
As far as I know, there's two versions of that.
Yeah.
That's another good one. Yeah.
But I know, it was definitely shown in classrooms.
Yeah, I never did. In fact, I'd never read it before. This is the first time I'd ever read it. Same with you?
I'd read it. Well, I read it last year, so I read it again before we did this. It only took me a day because it's only a little pamphlet kind of thing. But the kids left me alone.
I'm a slower reader. It took me a few more
days. I've read it already, so
I
guess that makes it quicker to get through, doesn't it?
I mean, it's a great book. I mean, you see why it's a classic book. It's a great story. It's really interesting reading it now and seeing how many, removing yourself from it being about the Russian Revolution, how close it is. We live in a world where veganism is a huge thing. Its story is much like, the thing that they call themselves is animalism. It's much like veganism, weirdly. These animals that are fed up with being basically sent to the death chamber.
Have miserable lives.
They have miserable lives. They don't have very long lives. That's literally the point of them, is to be killed and given to humans as a kind of weird sacrifice. So from that point of view, I thought that was quite interesting, looking at it from kind of a vegan or vegetarian type point of view. But it's a great book. It's very readable. It is, it took take me longer than a day, but you obviously enjoyed it. You read it twice.
Yes, definitely. No, it is. Yeah, there's a lot of it. It's quite depressing, really, isn't it?
It's a depressing read. Yeah, it is a depressing read. Yeah.
As far as let's talk about the animated version first. It condenses sort of the first third of the book into sort of the first 15 minutes, so it does kind of get on with it quite quickly. But and misses quite a few what I thought were quite key moments. The story is essentially the same, but it does miss out a lot of stuff. There's a lot of characters that aren't in there as well. So the main, you've got the pigs. There's Napoleon, who is who wants to be in charge. Then you've got Snowball, who also takes a kind of leadership role, but is more for the people, shall we say, and wants to create things to benefit the whole farm. Whereas Napoleon just wants to be in charge, basically tell everyone else what to do and reap the benefits. Most of the sort of main characters either represent real political figures or they represent certain factions of society. So most of the animals, like Boxer, for example, who's a big Shire horse who works really hard, represents the working class. And all the animals have different sort of levels of intelligence. Obviously, the pigs are probably the most intelligent. and there's various gradients of intelligence amongst the others. The sheep are pretty dumb and just do whatever they're told. They in the book they repeatedly there's a phrase, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, and they just bleat that all the time and over. Anytime anyone sort of says anything slightly against Napoleon, they'll start up a chorus of that until it's completely drowned out. They are literally sheep who just do what they're told and just follow what each other does. And then the horses, who are, of moderate intelligence, but again, just sort of follow.
They're always there for their brawn, aren't they? They're strong ones, and they do all the work.
Exactly, and Boxer has, in the book anyway, has mottos of I will work harder, and Napoleon is always right, which of course is not a great phrase to have, particularly towards the end. He starts to doubt himself as to whether that really is the case, because he is so big and strong and does so much work. The other animals look up to him. A lot of the animals don't speak in the cartoon. There is a narration.
There's a narrator for this one
by Maurice. Oh no, it's narrated by Gordon Heath, isn't it? And then Maurice Denham does the voices. Yeah. I think again it loses a little bit by not giving a lot of these animals voices. Obviously the narration pushes the story forward and lets you know what's going on, but giving those animals their own voice was a mistake. I don't know. I preferred. I would have liked to have heard their feelings voices. And their thoughts.
Yeah.
So
I think the interesting thing with the animation is obviously it's 54. There are characters in here that are your comical. There's a gosling, isn't there? That's a kind of comical, baby goose.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And which you don't really get in the book. You don't get that kind of the flapping around and being a cute. It's cute and it does silly things and. So that it does that kind of has that animation, that Disney animation thing going on in there. The music, the soundtrack is very much, you think of something like, I don't know, or Fantasia. And so it feels like an animated film of that era.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
And in fact, I think that a lot of parents took their children expecting it to be, fun.
Well, it was actually rated X when it was first released.
Oh, was it really?
Which made it, it's equivalent to today's 18. And now it's a U. So I don't know if there's any other film that's ever... there probably is, but that was originally rated an X when it was released and now is a U. I don't know. Possibly.
It kind of reminded me of, when kids were taken to Watership Down. They think they're going to see this, this fun children's cartoon, and it's really depressing and about life, which is fine. We should all see things like that. I thought the animation version was really good. I really enjoyed it, and I have seen that. I've never read the book, but I have seen. My mum showed me and my brothers that when we were younger, and I've seen it a few times actually. And I think it's really. For me, we haven't spoken about the 1999 version yet, but I found it really effective.
Yeah.
There's a really great moment. What it does is it shows you just how nasty Mr. Jones is to those animals. There's a scene early on before the pigs go on to do what they do. He kind of comes back from the pub and he's drunk and he's not very nice to them. And there's a very amazing... animation is great. The two directors, John Hallis and Joy Batchelor, were the animators on it. And it's beautifully animated. It's incredible work. And that moment where you see the fear on the faces of those pigs when Mr. Jones comes back, which really, it kind of it tells you what he's like and that's what was really effective in this film is that he's a nasty piece of work. He treats these animals like miserably. And the wonderful animation and looks on the faces of these animals is just perfect for telling you that, which as we will talk in the newer version, I didn't get that same. I didn't feel like in the newer version that the animals were in as much jeopardy, although they are, as they were portrayed in both the book and the animated version. I think.
So as far as the live action one goes, that starts very differently. Because we see the farm sort of destroyed effectively, and then we get a voiceover from a character called Jessie, who's a border collie, who I don't think is in the book at all.
No, she's not.
But it's kind of a stand-in for one of the horses who doesn't feature in either film, who's like a companion to Boxer.
No, she is here. So obviously there are puppies featured in the book and the other animation.
Yeah,
and they're kind of taken by Napoleon. and kept in secret.
Yeah.
To kind of, he makes them his guard dogs essentially. In the 1999 version, Jessie is their mother.
Yeah,
she
yeah.
has them.
I think in the book and the animation they're orphaned, so he just takes them away. Whereas in the live action, he doesn't let her see them. He takes them away from her, which is quite different.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more with Jones, I would say, in the film, because he almost portrays him a bit more sympathetic.
Yeah,
because he's got a lot of money problems.
Yeah, and like I said, that's why he's a drunk in the animation. And in the book, he's a nasty piece of work, and that's portrayed very early on.
Yeah.
But in this one, he's a bit sad and pathetic.
Yeah. I mean, he drinks, but
he's not. There's no point where he's really nasty to the animals.
He forgets to feed them, but
he forgets to feed them, so they're all starving. Yeah, but I mean, the first scene you see him in, he seems to take pride in what he's doing, much more so than. And from that point of view, I didn't feel. I mean, yes, obviously the animals are in jeopardy because they're on a farm. But I didn't get the same. It wasn't telling it in the same way, which was tricky.
And he owes, So I mentioned the neighbours, and one of them does feature in the '99 version. Jones owes him money again, which is a new addition. And then Jones starts, has like an affair with his wife, which is very strange and doesn't really seem necessary. And doesn't really add anything to the plot. It was a very strange addition, I thought, because
it's not mentioned again.
No, it's not. No, and it's unclear whether the Pilkington, the neighbour, is aware of that happening. Don't know, because he's constantly on his case, and everyone. They basically get run out of town, don't they? Jones and his wife, because he loses his farm, and all the rest of them think he's a joke and a loser. I don't think I mentioned Old Major. I mean, he's the sort of the big bore at the start who inspires the revolution by giving a speech, and he goes, "Oh, I'm not going to be." He basically, he knows he's old and he's going to die soon, and he wants, he's trying to inspire the other animals to rise up, and he says, it might not be, it might be next week, it could be in 50 years, but one day animals will rise up against their human oppressors. So, and of course, in the book, it's a little bit later on that they do. Old Major does pass away, as he predicts, but in the live action one, they're having a meeting again, as they do in the book and the animated one, and they're making lots of noise because I think they're singing, aren't they? Beasts of England, this song that they sing in the book. And this wakes up Jones, or he hears it. He is asleep, isn't he? Yeah, and he wakes him up, and he goes out thinking it's foxes or something. He goes out with his shotgun, and then he slips in the mud and lets off a shot, which hits Old Major by accident.
Yeah.
Who then dies, but in his last sort of breath, does a backflip out the window of the barn, which is completely bizarre.
Lands on his face, which is weird. I mean, that's
very strange.
I mean, the difference in the animated, in the 1954 version, he has a heart attack, Old Major, and he dies pretty much on the spot. At the same moment, I think, when he's giving that speech, he dies he just kind of almost dies naturally at that moment. Whereas in the live action version, yes, he gets killed when Mr. Jones comes running out. But on the flip side of that, what I quite liked is then when Mr. Jones comes out and he hears, when you see the animals in the shed when you see Old Major giving the speech, we hear them talking. But when Mr. Jones comes out, all he hears is the noises, animal noises, the sounds they make, which I thought was quite clever because he's not hearing them actually talk to each other. So I thought that was quite clever. Him then falling on his arse and shooting Old Major in the face, and then him falling out the window. Just was like, what?
Yeah, that was a bit weird.
This is weird. And it doesn't obviously help the fact that, I mean, so it's a Jim Henson workshop that created all the animations for the animatronics for the animals. And it's like, some of it works, some of it doesn't. It's a mishmash of obviously using real animals, which is...
The mouths looked CGI a lot of the time, which
there's like
odd.
The weird kind of like jaws flopping from side to side, which just looked out of place. And of course, because if that's a fake CGI, it doesn't match the eyes, which are really all over the place, which takes you out of it somewhat.
I mean, it's a decent effort. I mean, it was a TV movie, I think, so probably didn't have the budget of a big theatrical production. Yeah, there's just some strange choices.
Yeah, there were some strange choices
in the live action one. That's not to say that I think it did do some stuff better than the animated one. So there's a character called Squealer, another pig, who basically is sort of Napoleon's cheerleader or right-hand man or whatever, who in the book He's basically the minister for propaganda, isn't he? He goes around telling the animal, as soon as the animals start to think, actually, is this all good? Is Napoleon actually got our best interests in heart? And Squealer will come along and go, it's all fine, everyone. Don't worry about it. Napoleon knows what he's doing, He doesn't really get much of a role in the animated one. But in the live action one, he's voiced by Ian Holm, who, great actor, great voice. It wasn't quite how I imagined Squealer's voice to be. It wasn't quite Weasley enough, but it was fine. But he does do that. Maybe still not as much as in the book, but he does come out every so often and reassure the animals, it's all fine, don't worry about it. And then there's an interesting addition, which I thought was quite good, where towards the end he makes like propaganda films that get shown, which is not in the book, but I thought that was quite good.
Yeah.
About how great Napoleon is, etc., etc. So that was quite.
And there's also, I think, in the live action one that you don't get in the animation, there's more concern from the animals that perhaps what Napoleon is doing isn't right.
Yeah,
there's a lot more concern that is shown in the live action version. Yeah. It's not really played in the animation.
No, again, because they don't have, most of them aren't voiced particularly.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't hear their sort of thoughts
on
anything. I mean, finally, we'll come to the ending, which, we won't spoil it either way, but it is different in the films. I mean, I would say both films maybe, they haven't got the same ending, but they're similar-ish. They certainly, they're different to the book.
Famously, the animated version is. I mean, that was very controversial at the time, and of course, with the fact that the CIA may have had something to do with it.
Possibly, it might have been at their request. Yeah,
exactly, which makes it a little bit suspect. I thought the ending to the the live action version was just terrible. It was like it's hard not to talk about it without talking about it. If you know what I mean, it was like, everything's going to be okay. Great! Don't worry, you're going to be fine. It's all come to a bitter end. But look, here comes someone who's going to make all your life. And they actually say, I'm going to make sure that they don't do the same mistakes from the past aren't made. Yeah. You're still going to go to your death as a slaughtered animal, aren't you? Jesus Christ! I mean, when the live action one started, I was like, oh my god, this is terrible. I mean, it's Pete Postlethwaite who plays Mr. Jones, and he's one of our, he was one of our a great British actor, and a lot of the voices are voiced strangely. Some of them are American, some of them are British. Kelsey Grammer plays Snowball.
Patrick Stewart's Napoleon,
and Pete Postlethwaite actually plays Benjamin as well. So they're all kind of, especially the voices. A lot of them are known actors. I mean, Julia Ormond plays Jessie, and I found her voice acting, some of it quite poor, but not by. It was her fault. I think sometimes the voice got lost in the mix a little bit, and there were other things going on, and I couldn't quite hear what she was saying. It was because there's a lot of noise going on with all the animals in the background. They're all, really good, seasoned performers. I mean, Old Major was Peter Ustinov, who did that really well for the short time he was in it. I mean, I think as films, they both have positives and negatives. I think I preferred the animated version. Yeah. I think there was a lot going on in the 1999 version, almost too much going on. I thought there were some interesting visuals in there, especially as they get, you talk about the propaganda films that were being made, and then there's one point which feels very kind of artistically inspired with, you're looking up at Napoleon and these geese fly over. Obviously the geese are supposed to be planes, which they do in the animated version as well, but it's shown a bit more. So I thought that was quite interesting, but it was like the 1999 version. They wanted to put as many different ideas in it as they possibly could, and some of them worked, and most of them didn't work, and it kind of got a bit heavy. I mean,
I would say, because it's got a slightly longer running time, it gave the story a little bit more room to breathe, and there was room to fit stuff in that is in the book, whereas the animation did feel a little bit too condensed, I think, particularly at the start. Everything happens a bit too fast. But no, ultimately, I think animation was more successful as an adaptation. They're both, like you said, have positives and negatives, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the animation is the one everyone will think about.
Oh, absolutely,
before.
No doubt.
That's kind of the popular one of the two. I mean, I would say give the 1999 version a go. If you haven't seen it, it's worth a watch. There are only two of them in existence, although Andy Serkis is currently producing or directing a new one for
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah.
So that could be quite interesting.
I mean, presumably it'd be like sort of motion captured CGI animals, like his version of the Jungle Book. Mowgli
Yes, at least
was.
they won't be They won't be exploiting real animals for the like they did in the 1999 version.
So I mean, whether that'll be quite dark and whether that'll stick with the book's ending, who knows? It'll be interesting to see. But hopefully, it'll do the book justice and give us another interesting version to watch.
Do we have do you have any of the film versions on DVD
No.
or anything? You
No,
don't have them.
they're
Because I know
both-
that Network did Animal Farm.
They did, yeah.
I bought it
yeah.
from my brother.
There was a 60th anniversary Blu-ray a few years ago.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they're both on YouTube, so I just watched them on there. I mean, the animated one was, the quality of that was pretty good. The live action one, not so much. But as they're on there, I just watched them on YouTube.
Yeah, great. So that was kind of our Animal Farm book and two films. I mean, it's something we'll look at doing again, but what we want to do is pick films that have numerous versions of, so not just one, because there are plenty of books out there that have had a film made of it, but just maybe one film made of it. So what we'll do in the future is, find a book that has maybe had at least two versions of it. So we've got films to compare to the book as well. So obviously this was the first one. It worked or it didn't work. We shall see if
Let us know what you thought.
Let us know what you... Yeah, exactly. Is it something that interests you? Suggest some other books that have maybe not too many films of it. But we've got some other ideas of, we won't mention them now, but we've certainly got some other ideas of books with, a number of films or a couple of film versions. So that was Animal Farm. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Hit the subscribe button up there and don't forget to push the bell for notifications. There's other videos to check out over there. Come and find us on social media and join us again soon for another video.